through Sunday night. And that band of rain is going to continue to push its way north and eastwards, pushing further into Scotland and northern parts of England. Clearer skies developing further towards the west, but we'll also see some showers developing as we go into the start of Monday. So temperatures generally still holding up at around 10 or 11 degrees across the towns and cities to start Monday morning. But it could be quite a murky start for some of us, with some low cloud and fog generally lifting and breaking. Once that cloud and rain continues to push its way north across Scotland, then across much of the UK, it's a case of sunny spells, but also some frequent scattered showers that could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder. And we'll also see temperatures still remaining at around 16 or 17 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
True crime is everywhere.
Yep, and next weekend, CrimeCon UK takes place in London. And joining us now to tell us more about that event and the true crime phenomena is former detective Stephen. How did you pronounce your surname? Keogh. Sorry, Stephen.
That's all right.
I should have checked you before.
No worries.
And Nancy, and again, Nancy, what's your surname?
Bourne.
Thank you. I'm showing my ignorance there, but thank you both for joining us. So, Stephen, you're a former top cop. Hope you don't mind me describing you as that. At CrimeCon and other events like that, do you get into sort of the semantics of the investigations and, you know, how... For example, how I was watching something the other night where somebody was unfortunately murdered, but you saw the crime scene investigators trying to work out from which side the person was attacked from. Did the knife come from the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Is it all that kind of stuff?
So for me, everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing that knowledge of investigations, because if you watch TV, they get it wrong a lot. So what we try and do, I'm not the only police officer there, there's experts, so forensic scientists, psychologists, all from that investigative world, just trying to get across, well, actually, this is how it's really done. This is what we do, not what you're going to see on telly. And I think that's really important. So for me personally, coming along to CrimeCon, I just look at the list of people that are there, honestly, and I'm proud to be associated with them. There are some fascinating people there. People who've really fought for justice for their children. People who are campaigning for victims, for survivors. So it's an event that when you look at the name, you might think, oh, they're just going to sit there talking about serial killers and what they got up to. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's really about what goes on, how it impacts the victims, how the investigations are carried out. It's educational as much as anything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to this special edition of the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Camilla Tominey, and Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, former Foreign Secretary, former Mayor of London, and now the author of his own autobiography, Unleashed.
Unleashed.
You're unleashed on GB News.
It's great to be here.
Should I be afraid?
It's hard to contain this book. It's so...
OK, well, look,
Unleashed. It's been yammering to get out for months.
Read the serialisation, which is hugely compelling. I've had to skim read it to make sure I'm across everything that you're saying in this book. And let's be honest, I mean, it is revelatory and entertaining in equal measure.
Well,
I want to start, however, with a bit more of a serious serious tack, because I want you to put your foreign affairs hat back on. We're at very difficult times right now, aren't we? It's pretty disturbing for the GB News audience, actually, to see what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in Ukraine. Probably also have fears about what's going on in China, frankly.
Yep.
Just on Israel, do you think now that since the 7th of October attacks, that Israel's actually effectively given up on a two-state solution? Because it's no longer really possible or feasible for Netanyahu.
Look, I'm a believer in the two-state solution. I think that's the right way forward for Israel and the Palestinian people ultimately. But you have to recognise the fact, Camilla, all our viewers, I think, recognise the fact that Israel is dealing with groups of people who want to exterminate Israel. And they include Hamas, they include Hezbollah, they include the mullahs of Tehran, and they have a policy. It's not just rhetoric. They have a policy of extermination, of wiping Israel from the map. And so, yes, of course, it's important to produce a just and lasting solution for the Palestinian people, but that's difficult insofar as their leaders chronically, continually advocate the extinction of Israel. And so when the October, we're coming up to the anniversary now of the October the 7th massacre, 1,200 or more totally innocent Israelis were murdered or kidnapped, they still haven't returned all those hostages.
No.
They still retain the objective of wiping Israel.
Well, Israel is saying that if these hostages are returned, then the fighting ends. But can we credibly believe that?
I think that's very likely. I think that of course, the heart bleeds for the people of Gaza. The heart bleeds for the suffering of the Palestinian people. But the tragedy of the Palestinians, as Abba Eban once said, is that they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
Yeah.
And decade after decade, there have been moments when there could have been a deal, and their leadership has preferred the purity of trying to abolish the existence of the State of Israel.
I know,
and that was never going to happen.
Do you think Netanyahu is the right leader for these times? Has he actually made things worse?
Look, I think that I've known him for many years, Bibi Netanyahu, and I think lots of people have different views about him. What I will say is that I think that he presents a very clear and coherent case for ensuring the security of Israel. And, I go back to this point. Hezbollah has been firing rockets into northern Israel for donkey's years. Hamas launched an absolutely appalling attack, a genocidal attack on Israel. I think that whatever people may think about Bibi Netanyahu, and I personally always had a good relationship with him, but whatever people may think, the democracy of Israel has a right to protect itself. And you said that your opening question was, viewers will be worried about the state of the world. They'll be worried about what's happening in the Middle East, about what's happening in Ukraine. I think it's very, very important that we, as the West, recognise that the answer to this is for us to be strong, and strong in defence of our values and of democracy.
Is the new UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer being strong enough? We've had a Telegraph leader in the week suggesting that he's being too ambivalent on Israel and too ambivalent on Ukraine.
Look, I think that on Israel, to take that first, I don't wish to be unduly critical of the new government, but how can you coherently say, as Britain did the other night, and Keir Starmer did the other night, that we stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel after Iran fired a huge number of ballistic missiles at Israel? How can you say we stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel while at the same time, he's the first UK Prime Minister in modern history to put an arms embargo on Israel when Israel is under an existential threat? So, no, I don't see any coherence. But on Ukraine, which is the other great arena where our ideals and our principles are on threat. On Ukraine, what is the point of giving the Ukrainians the Storm Shadow cruise missiles and giving them the weaponry to take out the bases from which the Russians are using these hideous glide bombs against their positions, without giving them the permission to use that Storm Shadow against those Russian bases? It's completely incoherent, to use your word, which I think is completely right.
I'm going to go back to Netanyahu, because there's an amazing revelation in the book that when you showed him around the Foreign Office, back when you were Foreign Secretary...
It's so unleashed, it's hard to...
It's unleashed, it's hard to contain it.
It's hard to control it.
It's
just unleashed.
You showed him the desk where Arthur Balfour signed the declaration in
he was very
1917.
excited.
But you put in the book that you think that when he used the men's room, to use the American phrase, that he might have bugged your toilet.
Well, look, I mean, you know, I think it's... I won't go beyond what I say in the book, because these are what we call...
You found a listening device.
These are what we call security matters, and I obviously submitted the unleashed...
Well, do you think
I submitted unleashed to the...
Did BB bug Boris?
To the authorities to look at, to all the security services to check it, and they were happy with what I had said. But look, it was an amazing thing, because he came into my office. You've been into the Foreign Secretary's office. It is absolutely fantastic. They've got these amazing murals of wildly politically incorrect murals of Britannia, you know, breastfeeding the rest of the world and all that sort of thing. And he came in, and I showed him the desk, which I alleged had been where Balfour wrote the Balfour Declaration.
Was it the desk?
In 1917, when he wrote to Lord Rothschild saying that His Majesty's government views with favour the establishment of
But in the book, you seem unsure that it was the actual desk.
Well, I think it turns out there is another desk.
Right.
There are several desks.
You're just deviating.
But anyway, and he was very excited. Then I showed him the biro,
which certainly wasn't the one that was used to sign the declaration. But you're deviating from this bugging issue. You're basically saying that BB.
I'm deviating deliberately. I'm deliberately deviating.
Did he bug you or not?
Nobody knows. I don't know.
All right. But you found a listening device in the toilet after he had visited.
All I know is that after we were favoured with a visit, something was discovered.
All right, we're going to get on to Ukraine and Trump in a moment.
Yes, please.
But the Chagos Islands being given back to Mauritius, your reaction?
Crazy. I mean, I urge viewers of GB News to get out your maps, get out your atlases, check out the Chagos Islands, see where they are, see where Mauritius is. A long way away.
Yes.
What is this claim? It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Why are we doing this? Sheer political correctness, desire to look like the good guys, a desire to look as though we're unbundling the last relics of our empire. It's nonsense. It's a bad idea in hard geopolitical terms, because the base in Diego Garcia, as I'm sure you know, or for all our viewers know, is of huge strategic importance for the US, for the West. And it's a key component of the Anglo-American alliance. It's one of the things we bring to the table, has been for decades. That base, why are we trading away our sovereignty over Chagos? Completely the wrong thing to do.
And there's also
that strategic reason.
About China.
The point that you make is absolutely right. You know, with the best will in the world, Mauritius is a great place, wonderful country, wonderful people. But, of course, you hand over sovereignty to another jurisdiction, you don't know who's ultimately going to be pulling the strings. So, terrible, terrible idea geostrategically. But the thing that I really object to is it's done... There's this left liberal view that by kind of surrendering on things like this, on former colonial stuff, you kind of win points.
What, do you think it's virtue-signaling?
Yeah. People think it'll make us seem better to the rest of the world, more honourable, more decent. They don't think that.
What do they think?
No. They think Britain weak. They think pathetic. They think, why would you give up an asset like that? So
you think this has made Starmer look a lot weaker?
It doesn't. It doesn't actually. The idea that it buys us influence, that it buys us approval, that it's in the Committee of Civilized Nations, it's seen as a generous thing. It's rubbish.
All right, let's talk about somebody on the world stage who people don't regard as weak, I don't think. Putin.
Yeah.
What's your view? Mad, bad, or both?
Putin is he's quite small, Putin. But I met him. Had a long conversation with him in, I think, Berlin once. He's surprisingly small and speaks English very well. Not mad, definitely bad. He means no good for this country. He regards the United Kingdom as among their most important strategic foes, probably their most important strategic foes, which is a pity, but he's chosen that path. And he did things completely unnecessarily, the poisoning of Litvinenko, then the Salisbury poisonings, which you will remember, destroying what had been a progressive improvement in relations at the end of the Cold War. And we're now and of course invading Ukraine in 2014, and we're now in a very, very unhappy position. And you know, what he is doing in Ukraine is criminal, and it is also a mistake. It's a mistake for Russia, it's a mistake for Putin.
He's also getting extremely chummy, it seems, with Iran and China. Is that worrying?
Yes.
Is he forming a new axis of evil?
I think that we are engaged in a very serious struggle between the democracies and the autocracies. And they point to our failings and they say, oh, you know, look at America. Ridiculous. You have a president who refuses to accept the outcome of the election. You have a gigantic presidential voting system where it's decided by 30,000 people in a tiny handful of districts. Or you look at Great Britain, where they have a huge turnover of conservative prime ministers. One of whom, you know, and they say democracy is not producing stability. And they say, look at us, stability. But I would say to you, actually, if you look at the way the democracies and the autocracies compare, you look at where people really want to live, which countries they want to send their kids to university to, which countries produce the breakthroughs, which countries produce the great pop music.
Yeah.
It's the democracies, isn't it?
Sure. But then
who listens to Russian techno-funk?
I know, but then you detail in the book you know, Syria and this idea that actually the West trying to enforce regime change doesn't even worse. You know, this idea that we can enforce regime change in, say, Iran.
Yeah, I think that the Iraq experiment in 2003 really showed the limits of that project, and you can't impose democracy from 30,000 feet. And we tried it, and we got rid of a regime in Iraq. And I don't think anybody could really pretend that it was wholly beneficial for the people of Iraq, certainly not in the short or medium term. There were many casualties. There was a great deal of suffering. It led to a period of huge instability in the Middle East. And you look at somewhere like Libya, where we did it again. You know, we got rid of Gaddafi. But you go to Libya today, it is not a conspicuously happy, prosperous, successful, or united country.
Obviously,
and you know, so it's very, very difficult. You can't do nothing, because that's also a disaster. But to try to impose your own regime, your own favoured successor, as we did in Iraq, as we hope to do in Libya, that also doesn't work. But I think what happened after those failures is that we then retreated too much. And so when it came to Syria in 2013, when Assad bombed his own people, I think we were too hesitant. We didn't punish him with chemical weapons.
Yes.
We didn't punish him. We allowed him to cross our red lines, and we did
Well,
nothing.
on that, you're very critical of the Obama administration. I thought, let's bring American politics into this.
Yes.
The presidential race is on. In earnest,
It is,
isn't
yes.
it? Do you think the world is going to be safer under a second Trump presidency or Kamala Harris?
Look, I think it's very, very important that even, has-been politicians, there has been prime ministers, don't engage, such as myself. America is a great friendly
Well, you were
democracy.
born in America. You once had US citizenship.
I
If
did.
you hadn't renounced it, you would have a vote in.
I know, it's the most expensive decision I ever made because being born in America, do you know what they did? They then pursued me for the tax on, even though I was mayor of London.
This does happen. But back to
They
Trump,
pursued me
though.
for the capital gains
You were described
tax.
once as Britain Trump. I don't know whether you like that moniker or not.
I think that these types of analogies are very perilous.
Okay.
Between the UK
But
and America.
I think
So what I was going to say was, so you were going to ask about
Trump versus Harris.
Trump versus Harris.
What's
And
preferable for the world?
What I was saying in a roundabout way is that I don't want to get drawn into, either candidate. But, what I will say is that I do think, I only met Kamala Harris once, I think, and she seemed very nice. But what I will say about Donald Trump on the foreign stage, and get back to your real question, the anxiety about the world today, I think that there's no question that he was and is a strong performer. Yeah. And I think that if you look at the things that he did when it came to Syria, we mentioned the use of chemical weapons. It was actually Trump who bombed the bejesus out of Bashar al-Assad after he used chemical weapons against his own people. It was Trump who vaporized Qasem Soleimani of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Quds Force, put Iran back in the box. And actually, it was Trump who, unlike the Democrat administration, who really sympathized with the Ukrainians and gave them the Javelin shoulder-launched anti-tank rockets,
so
missiles.
You're not worried about any sense of Putin appeasing Trump?
Well, no, I'm not. No, because just going back to my time as Foreign Secretary, which you'll read about in Unleashed, by the way. We haven't mentioned Unleashed for about 35 seconds.
It's on screen the whole time, don't worry.
Sorry, okay. But if you sorry, Camilla, but if you remember, when I was Foreign Secretary, I mentioned it already, we had this terrible business of the poisonings in Salisbury. And we had to get the whole of the world to respond diplomatically to this outrage. It was the use of Novichok, chemical weapon, on British soil. It was in breach of the International Chemical Weapons Convention. It was a terrible thing to do. And you remember a totally innocent member of the public, Dawn Sturgis, lost her life, and Sergei and Yulia Skripal were very badly poisoned. And it was my job as Foreign Secretary then to try to get, with Theresa May, the then Prime Minister, to try to get all our friends and allies around the world to kick out Russian spies in protest at what they had done in Salisbury.
And Trump did that.
And Trump turned up trumps. He really did.
It sounds to me like you're leaning more towards a Trump than Harris presidency
you're a very good journalist. Very
that's
good
the vibe
journalist.
I'm getting.
But I'll just get back to the other point. Trump expelled. They went way over our expectations.
All right.
They
So you're
expelled
saying
60
Ukraine and
Russians.
Zelensky are safe with a potential Trump presidency?
I believe very strongly that it will not be Donald Trump's agenda to come into the White House again and be the president who allows the Soviet empire to be rebuilt.
Okay.
And that you don't make America great again by making the Soviet empire great again.
Okay. Well, there you have it, part one of my exclusive interview with Boris Johnson, who, let's be honest, is unleashed, in body and in name of his new book. So that's part one. We dealt with foreign affairs. You'll probably agree that he's pretty comfortable on that territory. We are going to get on to COVID. We're going to get on to Partygate. We're going to get on to his relationship with the Conservative Party. We're, of course, going to talk about Brexit. And we're even going to throw in a little bit of the personal, so do keep watching because it's fascinating stuff. Like you, actually, I'm watching this again for the first time because we did it in the studio on Thursday and we're now all watching it live on telly and it is really quite compelling. So don't go anywhere. In a moment after the break, I'm going to be speaking to Fleet Street legend Eve Pollard to just react on that first part of the interview. But suffice to say that there is a great deal more to come, so do not move a muscle.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Right, we're having beans this morning.
Beans for breakfast. There's no better breakfast, is there?
I like beans on toast for breakfast.
So do I. I would actually call myself a baked beans connoisseur.
Would you? Well, we can put you to the test. Tell us what the story is.
The story is, you might think beans, you might think Heinz. Heinz means beans.
Beans means Heinz.
Beans means Heinz. Heinz means beans. Who knows? So, of all of the supermarket baked beans, it is actually the Aldi supermarket version, this version over here, which came out on top. The Bramwell's baked beans, 76% on the taste test.
And they're much cheaper as well.
Much cheaper. Households can save, if you're buying 2 cans a week, £100 a year buying the Aldi version of these baked beans. So we thought we're going to do a blind taste test this morning to see.
So we've got the Aldi beans, we've got M&S beans, and we've got beans Heinz. So I think number 2 is the best one.
Yeah, I agree.
Right,
came first best for me.
So the Heinz is number 3.
Interesting.
Which was the worst one?
Which is the worst one, which is the ones, actually, I'll buy it home.
Do you know what? That's just proven it. M&S was number 1. And Aldi was number 2, which was our favourite as well.
I said M&S.
Yeah, and we both said Aldi.
We did say Aldi. I have to be honest, I was not expecting that.
I told you. This is the hill I will die on. These are the beans that I get at home and I love them.
At university, you get the tin that's half that size, and it was 21p for the store ones and 23p for Heinz baked beans. And as I say, the key was in the thickness of the sauce and how hard the beans were. They
actually are really nice. They're really. I am really surprised, and we buy more than 2 cans a week, so it saved me a couple of £100.
We get through 2 cans.
So you like the Aldi ones?
I like the Aldi ones. I'm shocked.
They're a lot cheaper. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News, which has become a Boris bonanza of a morning. We've just seen the former Prime Minister speak about foreign affairs, including the idea that he was bugged in his foreign office by Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, that he thinks that Ukraine will still be safe under a second Trump presidency. I asked him whether he thought the world would be safer under Harris or Trump. He didn't want to commit, but I think he sided a bit more towards Trump than Harris. Criticised Keir Starmer for giving away the Chagos Islands. That's going to be the subject of a parliamentary vote next week, retrospectively. Talked a bit as well about the general state of the world and how worrying it was, not least with what's been going on in Lebanon and with Iran. Let's bring Eve Pollard, former editor of the Sunday Mirror, into the conversation. Eve, what do you make of Boris so far?
Well, first of all, he's loving it. He's really enjoying being in the spotlight again. You know, he's been making lots of money and doing lots of speeches and writing this book probably quite quickly.
Yes.
I think if I was Camilla, I'd get somebody on the phone to him this afternoon.
Kamala Harris, yes.
Absolutely. I think he's right. Whatever we say, this is not a political thing. He's right about us as the West fighting for democracy, fighting for what we believe. And I think I don't know enough about those islands we've given away, but I don't know about you. I don't like giving anything away till I've checked what good we could do there, what we
probably
could
shouldn't
do.
have given them away in recess when no MPs were able to comment on it.
Yes.
And what message does it send out to the Argentinians and the Spanish in relation to the Falkland Islands and Gibraltar? So he was very punchy on that. Look, this is his most comfortable territory. I will warn you of that, viewers and listeners, to this programme, because obviously we started him on foreign affairs because he's happy talking about foreign affairs. gets a little less comfortable when we start talking about COVID and Partygate, but that's still to come. But in general, I mean, his demeanour, you think, looks good. I mean, he's lost none of his va-va-voom.
Lost none of that. Of course, all the reviewers, all of which so far have been men, I think, don't like him because he's the guy who's got the pretty girl on his arm. He's the guy who's been successful. The blonde hair has been deliberately smashed around his face.
Yeah.
And he looks better than he ever did as Prime Minister.
Yeah.
He always looked exhausted, didn't he, as Prime Minister?
Indeed so. Well, look, we're going to analyse much more of it all morning. There's much more to come. We're going to be speaking to Boris Johnson next about COVID, about Brexit, about the troubles he had with his Tories colleagues, and also about the royals. What he has to say about his last meeting with Queen Elizabeth II is fascinating. Equally of interest, and it's a surprising one, but maybe it's the meeting of two old Etonian minds, is what he had to say about his relationship with Prince Harry and indeed with his wife, Meghan. All that's still to come. For goodness sake, do not go anywhere, and we're going to be analysing it with Eve and a panel of experts. Stay tuned.
Good luck. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
National Trust Director General has said something rather curious. She's admitted that 70% of the charity's staff are Union Jack-hating progressive activists. Yes, this was speaking at a Labour Party fringe event. The boss of the charity, Hilary McGrady, acknowledged that there was a gap between her staff's views and the views held by the wider public. So was she being honest? Joining me now to discuss this is historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadelman-Koo, who I believe is with me. Rafe, thank you very much indeed. Can this be true?
The founders of the National Trust and later figures involved in it, like my hero James Lees-Milne, were really motivated by love of nation. But I think that love of nation in the Trust has become actively, national self-loathing. And that's really the state of modern Britain. And with the Trust, I mean, what we've done is we've actually entrusted our national heritage to those people who actually actively despise our national heritage. And it's, it's utter madness.
Have these people wanted to take over charities like the National Trust for their political ends, or is it just something that happens? Is it just the type of people who work in charities?
This has been part of the long march through the institutions, that people need to understand that Britain is now a post-revolutionary society. So the buildings that house our institutions look the same, but the people who now run them bear no comparison to the generations who lovingly built and ran them. They are cuckoos in the nest, and we need to understand that. And of course, once you realize that, of course, that explains completely why, the National Trust and others have crudely tried to denigrate our national heroes and link them and their houses to colonialism and slavery, as they ludicrously tried to do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to this special edition of the Camilla Tominey Show. Lots more to come from my Unleashed episode with Boris Johnson. But first, here's your news with Sam Francis.
Camilla, thank you very much and good morning to you. We start this hour in the Middle East, where massive consecutive strikes have hit Beirut's southern suburbs overnight. If you're watching on television, you can see here some of the latest pictures emerging from Beirut this morning. It comes as Israel claims that its forces have killed 440 Hezbollah fighters so far in its ground operations. That's in southern Lebanon, as it destroyed 2,000 Hezbollah targets. Well, the fourth and, for now, the final scheduled flight for UK nationals fleeing that conflict in Lebanon is set to depart today. 3 previous flights returning to Birmingham earlier this week. Foreign Secretary David Lammy has been urging anyone still wanting to leave to register immediately, warning that future flights aren't guaranteed. Here, meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer is warning that sparks from the Middle East conflict are, he says, igniting tensions back in Britain. Writing in the Sunday Times, he condemned the rise in hate crimes against Jews and Muslims since the October the 7th attacks, calling for restraint and political solutions to avoid further escalation. He's also raised concerns about the growing risk of a direct conflict between Israel and Iran, which he said would have devastating global consequences. And faith leaders here in the UK are calling for unity today after a year of what they've described as horrific suffering in the Middle East conflict. More than 2,600 protests have taken place so far across the UK, with more than 500 arrests and policing costs of over £46 million. Anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hate have reached record highs, with thousands of incidents recorded so far this year. In a joint letter, those faith leaders have rejected hatred and called for communities to stand together. Well, cross-community events are planned today, including vigils in Oxford and in Hyde Park in London, as the country marks a year since that war with Russia began. Speaking of Russia, Russia has launched more than 80 drones and 3 missiles at Ukraine in a significant overnight attack. That's according to reports from Ukraine's air forces. It comes as President Zelensky's preparing to unveil a victory plan detailing a crucial allies meeting in Germany on the 12th of October. This plan is expected to outline the steps towards ending its war with Russia. While specifics remain under wraps at this stage, US officials have suggested it could include just a revised request for increased military support and long-range missile systems. That's the latest from me. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show. We've got a jam-packed hour to come. In this next part of my interview with the former Prime Minister, we discuss the impact COVID had on his premiership and his lack of accountability for Partygate. You admit in the book that you came close to carking it, as you say it, when you had COVID and ended up in intensive care. Many people have said since, should you have returned to work so quickly? Did it impair your judgment? Might it have been a better idea at the time, considering how ill you were, to have stepped down at that point?
No, I think that would have been a mistake, and I don't think there was any need to do that at all. What is true is that I was pretty groggy in the first few weeks.
Did it impair your judgment, do you think?
I don't think so. No. I think what is true is that, as I'm sure many of our viewers will remember, it does. If you get it badly, it really does knock you out. I did take a few weeks to be fully fit again, but there's some rule about coming out of ICU, how many days you spend in ICU, and then the
times it by 7
whatever
per week,
it is,
whatever. But I say that because when you reflect on your pandemic legacy, it doesn't look great. You've got Dominic Cummings describing you as a shopping trolley. You've got people still not forgiven you for Partygate, rightly or wrongly. Now you're saying on lockdowns, I'm not saying that lockdowns achieved nothing. I'm sure they had some effect, but were they decisive in beating back the disease, turning that wave down? All I can say is I am no longer sure, which all sorts of amounts to you having mismanaged this pandemic quite badly.
Well, on the contrary, I would say that actually, if you look at what we did in that period and beyond, it was absolutely outstanding. And on lockdowns and the efficacy of lockdowns, I know that sainted colleagues on GB News and you and viewers will have different opinions about whether they were the right thing to do.
The suggestion is the cure was worse than the disease.
And I've heard that. So let me say first of all that I do think that when you have a disease that is mysterious, whose transmission mode of transmission is really still unknown, and there were key things that we didn't understand about COVID. It's very frightening. And if you look at the history of pandemics, the only way to deal with that situation is to try to restrict transmission, if you possibly can. And that always happens. And that is what we did. Now, my question, and I really, I don't want to anticipate what Dame Heather Hallett, the head of the COVID inquiry, will say, but looking back, My question is, I think the lockdowns were the right thing. I think the non-pharmaceutical interventions were the right thing to do broadly. I think it was the right thing to restrict the spread of the disease. But I think we need to try to assess, and it's very, very difficult, were they so valuable in bending the epicurve of the disease as to outweigh the disbenefit caused by the lockdown, the detriment to children's education,
I mean, do you
and
regret
everything
closing
else?
schools now?
And I think that is the calculus. That's what we really need to work out. Now, I still believe that what we did was right.
On school
schools,
closures?
I think there was a real risk, as it seemed to us at that time, that if you had schools as pools of infection, then the kids sadly would go home. They would infect the older members of their family, and many older and vulnerable people would die. And I couldn't live.
Okay.
And these were appallingly difficult.
All right.
Decisions.
And I think everybody
So I broadly believe that the lockdowns were right. Where I think that, and you mentioned the party, or the allegations of party, and party and so on. What I can really tell you is that I don't believe that people were partying in that sense. I don't think that people set out to break the rules in Number 10.
There was a sense
on the
to
contrary.
which... No, but hang on a minute. The reason why the public is so angry about it is because of how they suffered, how they couldn't go out, how they couldn't be with loved ones. Imagine being in intensive care. You can imagine it yourself.
I can not only imagine. I was in it. I wasn't in it.
Right?
No, sure.
You're with loved ones. You can't be with them when they're dying. You can't go to their funerals. There was this idea that you disregarded the rules you set. But I'm also going to put it.
So let me just come back on that and just explain that what I feel very, very strongly. I didn't
standards.
I didn't know.
That's why people object.
Of course, that's right. But that's not how I saw it. I didn't see people partying, right? It didn't, and I really don't think that those civil servants set out to break the rules and to have a great time. It was not like that in Number 10. It was if anything, a pretty funereal and exhausting time. And we were working the whole time. And so just back to your original, point about the whole handling of the pandemic. What I would say, looking back on it all, is that it is really hellishly difficult in a vibrant, mature democracy for a government to impose rules to stop the spread of a disease when human beings inevitably seek contact with other human beings. And we live in a very, very diverse, energetic society, and it was hard. I mean, actually, as Chris Whitty was saying the other day, it was quite amazing the extent to which people did comply.
But that's the point. Maybe they'd have complied anyway because we're British and we do as we're told.
That's right, and that was good. And I do think it made a huge difference. The question is, did it make enough difference? But where I really, really think people need to remember that government can make a difference is when it comes to finding cures and when it comes to protecting the population with medicine.
Yes.
And the record of the United Kingdom government was absolutely outstanding.
And vaccines, protection to a certain extent, not in care homes initially and all the rest of it, but not to play out, again, the lockdown files. As you're here and we're talking one-to-one just about you, there is a perception, and it's been aided by your former advisor, Dominic Cummings' shopping trolley analogy, is that you were indecisive, that you were conflicted, that you were, frankly, at times all over the place. Oh. You're a libertarian on one hand, you're having to adopt really draconian measures, which you must have really railed against it in your own mind. We haven't just got Cummings' analysis of it. We've also got Sir Graham Brady. He's come out with his own memoir. He's saying at 1 minute you were sort of cursing the 2-metre rule. The next you were asking him, as he was a COVID sceptic, how many people would you let die?
But I think both things are, Camilla, are totally consistent.
But it sounds as if you weren't decisive enough because you didn't know yourself, and therefore that's where the shopping trolley analogy comes from.
Well, I totally reject that because that's total nonsense. Because any sensible we had two massively conflicting objectives, and it was absolutely irrational.
So shopping
to try to
trolley is unfair.
Complete nonsense. Because I mean, we had to take. If you want examples of decisive action and getting things done, then look at what actually happened once the advisors that you mentioned had left Number 10, and we began the vaccine rollout.
Yes.
The story of this book is really about belief in Britain, and it's about a certain model of national independence. And a lot of the story, I think you read quite a bit of it, is about the fight that I had with some colleagues to make sure that after the 2016 vote to come out of the European Union, when 17.4 million people voted, biggest expression of popular will ever, for any project ever, we had to make sure that it made sense that we delivered a proper Brexit and that we actually took back control. Because you will recall coming to the...
We're going to get on to
but it all fits together, because we had to make sure that we didn't remain locked in the lunar pool of the EU, as Starmer is now drifting back, by the way, and that we fully took back control of our laws, our borders and our money. And the constitutional point was incredibly important. And several times during those debates, Starmer and co voted, for instance, to stay in the European Medicines Agency as part of staying in the single market and basically being run by Brussels remotely as a kind of vassal state. Now, because we didn't do that, Camilla, because we came out, we were able to do something quite extraordinary.
We know that, and I know why you want to champion your role in the vaccine and Kate Biggs.
I think our viewers might have forgotten.
I totally get that.
So, no, but let me quickly remind them, because I don't want to. If you were coming to this later in the show, then fine. But let me just anticipate it, because it's incredibly important. If we hadn't taken back control in that way fully,
yes,
then at the end of 2020, we would not have been able to authorise AstraZeneca and Pfizer faster than any other European country. No, because it's incredible.
Hang on a minute.
No,
the
I'm
point
not.
is, and we can talk about Brexit, but Brexit didn't cost you your premiership. COVID did, and Partygate did. I know we can talk about Chris Pincher, but your own closest advisor suggested that you had mismanaged the pandemic, and then, unfortunately, I mean, do you agree with me that if it wasn't for COVID, you could still be Prime Minister right now?
Look, I think there were all sorts of things that contributed to my leaving Number 10. But I just want to go.
I think a massive part of it.
What the point I want to make to you, and what I'm
I know, but
is that without the I think people, actually fair-minded people, would say no, because actually if you look at what we did with the vaccine rollout, it was absolutely outstanding. And it's very, very important to get this point, because we're going to lose it again. And I beg you to follow it, because unless we keep that proper control, we won't be able to do things like that again. So Rachel Reeves is now saying we've got to go back into being a rules taker from the EU.
What do you think Starmer and Reeves are trying to reverse Brexit?
So if we'd been a rules... This is the key point. If we... Yeah, of course they are. Now, if we'd been a rules taker...
Yes.
At the end of 2020, 2021, we would not have been able to authorise AstraZeneca and Pfizer. No, but you keep interrupting this, because it's very, very important. And that was how, by March 2021... we had vaccinated 45% of the UK population.
The vaccine programme
compared to
will always
10%,
be part of your legacy.
10% of the UK population.
I'm asking you this. Looking back, you must have regrets. There must be things you wish differently.
Well, I look back at that, and I think it was an incredible
No, I'm
success.
talking about the whole of your management of the pandemic. Surely you look back and say to yourself, I didn't handle some of this well. I could have done things differently.
Well, I think, if you look... I did my best to explain to the COVID inquiry what I thought about the handling of the pandemic, and I think there were certainly things that we didn't realise at the beginning that COVID was transmitted asymptomatically, and that was a big problem.
You're now saying that you're convinced the virus was man-made, by the way.
I do think that looks like the most likely explanation. Yes, I do.
And then on regrets, don't you regret? I mean, What were you thinking?
So
You'd been
Camilla,
told he was a career psychopath by David Cameron.
So, big picture, what do I regret about the whole thing? COVID. I mean, you're on the right track.
Good.
The thing, but it wasn't so much COVID that was the problem, or our handling of COVID, because I think, as I say, if you look at what we did with the vaccine rollout, governments are responsible for that. It was outstanding. I think the problem was really with the party and how I was able to interact with my colleagues. And there, I have to admit, I just didn't keep my eye on the ball. And COVID, you're right, that COVID was a big part of that, because so for 18 months, I was trying to fight the pandemic, and loads of MPs were sitting at home on their laptops, and they were then getting a lot of abuse about me and stuff on social media, and understandably, a lot of colleagues started to fret.
Yes.
And much more than I think I understood at the time.
The reason they were getting grief over Partygate and other things was because you didn't have a grip on number 10. Your grip wasn't firm enough on number 10. That's the allegation. What's your answer to that?
I think that the problem was really that I wasn't able to go and put an arm around colleagues and reassure them about everything. And I think that they became very fractious.
Well, there you have his reaction to what went wrong during COVID. Was it that he couldn't put his arm around his Conservative colleagues? Or was he that shopping trolley? You decide. I hope you'll agree I gave him enough time to answer. There's more in his premiership to come. I really do probe what went wrong in much greater detail, and again, who he blames. So again, there's much more to come in this Boris Bonanza. Do not even think of going anywhere.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Earlier this week, Olympic swimmer Adam Peaty finally proposed to his girlfriend, because I've been waiting for this, the daughter of Gordon Ramsay, with a gorgeous yellow diamond ring.
Yeah, so the demand for coloured diamonds in the last 10 years has soared by, guess how much, 77% between 2010 and 2019. Joining us now to tell us more about some of the hottest trends in the diamond world is dealer to the stars, Neil Dutson. Good morning, Neil.
Morning, Ben.
And I've got one of your exemplary examples. Look at this bad boy.
So that's a very rare Muso Colombian emerald. And it's alpine green translucent, so it's a really stunning
See if
colour.
we get a close-up.
So, yeah, so pretty impressive.
Can I be very crude and ask how much this is worth?
So value is £200,000.
How much, sorry?
£200,000. Now, the reason is its rarity. It's minor oiling. It's very, very, very pretty. The two diamonds on the side are D-colour, flawless diamonds, just to accentuate the setting.
Neil, how did you get into diamonds?
I studied diamonds in Antwerp. So Antwerp used to be the diamond capital of the world, really. Yeah. 85% of the world's diamonds go through Antwerp, or used to. And now Dubai has taken over. And yeah, I just went to a school there. I learnt about diamonds, and I just didn't want to be seen off in the future.
Neil, I'm very concerned I'm going to drop 200 grand's worth of diamonds into my cup of tea, so can I give that back?
Absolutely.
But I can hold one if you like.
Oh, well, I've got
Neil.
a lovely one here.
Thank you.
So this is a fancy vivid yellow. It's 8 carats.
This is my dream ring, just so you know, for this hand. This would be
Is it big
amazing.
enough?
So what would I call this? A yellow?
So that's a natural fancy vivid yellow diamond. Value £300,000. So.
It fits
depends
like
where you're buying it from.
If it's like a glove, Neil, maybe it's a sign it's meant to be mine.
Definitely a sign, yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Still lots more to come. In the next part of my interview with the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, we look at his tumultuous relationship with Tory colleagues, whether Brexit has gone far enough, and his belief that Starmer is trying to get us back into the EU. Let's take a look.
If you look at the circumstances of my removal, I mean, I'm absolutely convinced, by the way, that if we'd been able to hang on from 2022, summer 2022 onwards, we would have defeated the inflation problem. We would have gone on, I'm sure, to win the election. Don't forget, reform, which did so much damage to the Conservatives in July 2024, was on 0%.
Okay. So it's Rishi Sunak.
0% when I was Prime Minister.
How much blame are we apportioning to Rishi Sunak?
And I'm just
your
saying...
frenemy.
I'm just saying that when I was... in Downing Street, and right up until the end, we're only a handful of points behind. Okay. And there was no kind of big electoral disaster. I think it was one of those things where, as I say in Unleashed, I think I was very complacent about managing the party. I got it wrong. I should have been in the tea rooms. I should have done more. I just didn't. I didn't...
Well, maybe you trusted the wrong people. Nobody can understand for the life of them inside Tory circles and actually outside them why on earth you brought Michael Gove back into the scene after he had knifed you so spectacularly in 2016.
It's my general love of humanity.
Why did you do that?
Christian forgiveness. And I thought...
Well, did you think he would be across the detail more than you?
I thought that he was a talent. And I still do. And
keep friends close and enemies closer.
I thought I think he believes in levelling up, and I think he's very good at it.
If he hadn't have knifed you in 2016, and you had been Prime Minister then, again, I'll quote Brady, the former chairman of the 22, because he has this interesting theory that if you had been Prime Minister, if you had had a reversed order, you had been Prime Minister to get the Brexit deal instead of Theresa May, but Theresa May had dealt with COVID, that would have been a better sequencing. You would have got a better deal initially than her Chequers fudge, and she would have dealt better with the pandemic than you.
The problem with that, I mean, it's absurd to talk about these hypotheticals, but the problem is that the reason we were able to be tough with our friends and partners in European Union is because after December 2019, we had the bazooka of a big parliamentary majority.
Yes.
And that was what Theresa didn't have. And that made all the difference.
Although you say in the book that when you started talking about no deal, it was an elaborate bluff.
Yeah, look, I mean, with any negotiation, you've got to be able to walk away. And I would have walked away, and we would have.
You say in the book that you were bluffing.
I didn't want to, but in the end, we got a good deal.
This idea that you can't communicate, perhaps, with all of your Conservative colleagues. What is it then?
Because we had lockdown.
I know.
You can't have it both ways. You can't say that we weren't observing it. Because we were stuck in. I was stuck in number 10.
There's relationship issues with some other Tories, isn't there? You know, we look at somebody like Lord Heseltine and what he says about you, Dominic Grieve, David Gauke, and others. What is it about you that some Tory colleagues seem to find so objectionable?
Well, I think that the three characters that you mention were, apart from anything else, I mean, they've all at various times been very friendly towards me. Michael Heseltine was my predecessor in Henley. Dominic Grieve was a neighbouring MP.
I know, but they've all been scathing about you. It's like Nicholas Soames as well, Churchill's grandson. Being very negative about you. What is it about you that rubs people up the wrong way?
Well, I think that you have to face the fact that they had a particular view of the UK, which I don't share. I believe that we're great if we do things on our own. I think we're great I think that national independence is extremely important. And I think that point is proved beyond peradventure of a doubt in Unleashed.
Yes.
Because having secured full national independence, we were able to do things differently, such as the vaccine rollout, such as the AUKUS Pact, such as the taking a different stance from our European partners on Ukraine.
Do you think?
And I believe, and what worries me now is that the Starmer government is really determined to try to roll all this stuff back, and it will be a disaster. You know, you can't. Britain, in a globalized economy, ultra-competitive globalized economy, needs to be able to do things differently. Can I just quickly give you some statistics about the European Union compared to the United States?
As long as you're not filibustering.
No, I'm not. It's very, very important for people to understand. Basically, since 2008, the US and the EU, including the UK, were worth about $14 trillion in accumulated GDP. Since then, together, Europe is worth about $15 trillion.
Yes.
The US has gone up to $26 trillion. The growth, and that's because of a very different approach to markets, to enterprise,
to energy.
Capitalism.
They're not pursuing your completely
well, they are actually
self-defeating net zero promises.
Well, actually, I think there's
fracking till the cows come home over in America.
There is a way of doing. I'm perfectly in favour of hydrocarbons as part of the transition. Yeah, you bet. But I think actually the green technology is something that offers prospect of huge numbers of jobs and growth in this country. So I see no contradiction there. But what I'm trying to say is that those dear colleagues that you mentioned are wedded to a certain view of Britain, locked in the European Union, effectively run by the European Union.
Yes.
I didn't think that was the right thing for this country. I fought like hell to make sure that we came out of that version.
Some people might not think that we maximised our post-Brexit opportunities.
And I think that we need to maximise our opportunities.
We haven't, have we?
Well, I think that we've done a lot of things differently already. I mean, if you
though.
We've done a lot of things differently already, and there is much more that we could do.
Rishi Sunak kept on talking about free ports. I'm not sure whether that was necessarily what Leavers had signed up for.
No, we kept
wanted more competitive corporation tax rates.
Free ports are something that we talked about.
In 2016,
2016, free ports was in the middle of our campaign. But where I agree with you very much, Camilla, and I'm sure GB News or viewers would agree too. I think that there is scope to do much more, and it's about believing in Britain, right?
Yes.
It's about believing in this country's ability to do things differently, and so Brexit is part of it, but also levelling up.
Yes.
And you say, well, why did I get Gove back? And it's a very, very good question. Actually, because I thought he had the drive and the ability to get that project going. He did a very good job. Now, levelling up is the rational thing for this country.
All right, so it's all quite friendly up to this point. Now, I have to warn you, viewer advisory, things get a little bit heated next as I try and pin Boris Johnson down over Rishi Sunak's sneaky behaviour to oust him and how his colleagues felt he was indecisive as a leader. It gets a little bit tetchy. Do stay tuned.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a cloudier picture out there today with spells of rain and drizzle with sunshine and showers to start the new week. But through this morning, we have got some spells of sunshine across the far southeast. But as you can see, a lot of cloud around, and that will continue to push its way eastwards. So a largely murky afternoon to come for many of us. We also have heavy spells of rain across the west, especially across Northern Ireland into Wales and the southwest of England, perhaps even with the odd rumble of thunder here. Temperatures holding up still at around 17 or 18 degrees as the high towards the south. As we go through Sunday evening, that band of heavy rain is going to continue to push its way slowly north and eastwards, affecting much of the southern parts of Wales into the Midlands, but we may see some glimmers of late sunshine towards the far southwest. Heavy spells of rain continuing across eastern parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England. Cloudy conditions still remaining across much of Scotland with outbreaks of rain here through Sunday night. And that band of rain is going to continue to push its way north and eastwards, pushing further into Scotland and northern parts of England. Clearer skies developing further towards the west, but we'll also see some showers developing as we go into the start of Monday. So temperatures generally still holding up at around 10 or 11 degrees across the towns and cities to start Monday morning. But it could be quite a murky start for some of us with some low cloud and fog generally lifting and breaking. Once that cloud and rain continues to push its way north across Scotland, then across much of the UK, it's a case of sunny spells, but also some frequent scattered showers that could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder. And we'll also see temperatures still remaining at around 16 or 17 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. Well, brace yourselves, because in the next part of the interview that I've conducted with Boris Johnson, we delve into Rishi Sunak's role in his downfall, his belief that he could have won the last general election if he was still in charge, and why Sue Gray was a big mistake. You have to appreciate that people watching and listening to this are angry with you, because here's a bloke who delivers an 80-seat majority in 2019, OK? The biggest popular vote share since 1979, and people looking at you say, you squandered it. You fluffed it.
Well, sorry,
we could have a Conservative government now. There could be no reform in Nigel Farage.
There wasn't,
but there was. For the mistakes that Boris Johnson made.
So, number one, yes, we won the biggest majority since 1979.
And you threw it away.
And when I was Prime Minister, the week I was Prime Minister, I had to resign because of my colleagues, which we have discussed. Where was reform? What percentage were they on? Well, why don't we tell our viewers? Zero.
OK.
OK, zero.
You keep on talking about colleagues. Why are you avoiding my question about Rishi Sunak?
So, I want to answer because you said you
throwing away legacies.
No, yeah, right. So look at it. We not only got Brexit done, delivered full national independence, right, which was not an insignificant thing. We then used that to deliver the fastest vaccine rollout of any European country.
Yes.
So that we were able to have the fastest economic recovery of any G7 country. When I ceased to be Prime Minister, we had, and the contrary to the predictions of the gloomsters, we had unemployment at a 50-year low, 620,000 more people in paid employment than when I became, than before the pandemic. Unemployment, youth unemployment at a 45-year low.
So you said I was
squandering
what went wrong? The problem was, unfortunately, you.
No, I think that, well...
You would still be Prime Minister now if you were a better Prime Minister.
I'm trying to tell you what the things that I'm proud of that we did as.
I mean, who
that I
else
did
is
as
to
Prime
blame? Let's talk about Mr. Sunak.
So hang on a sec. What we also did.
Can you please address
what
the
we
issue,
also
Mr.
did.
Sunak?
What we also did.
Rather than listing
was
things you've done, because you've listed them all in your book. It's available from all good bookshops. Just answer my question.
Yeah, so you're making a fair enough. You're making a fair point. If I was so great, how come I'm not still there?
Exactly.
Which is a reasonable.
It's a fair point, isn't it?
And I think the answer to that, sadly, is that there was an outbreak of irrationality in my party, and I think they made the wrong calculation. And you ask about Rishi and
Maybe
Rishi
you just weren't good enough. Maybe you weren't a good enough Prime Minister.
If you look at the record,
maybe you're a great writer and a good journalist.
You know, I direct you to what we did. We had the fastest vaccine rollout of any European country. I've given you the unemployment stats. We helped, by the way, to protect the independence of another European country in a way that I don't think would have happened if I hadn't been there.
OK.
And
we could go on listing your successes.
Yes, we had neighbourhood crime down 31%.
We could list all of your
we were on
successes
track
now.
Yeah,
so
yes, I do. If you ask me, if you really push me to say, was it all a terrible mistake to kick me out? Yes, I think it was.
But was that Rishi Sunak?
I think it was a goof. And yes, I think he was badly advised.
Badly advised?
I think he was badly advised. I think he was. Well,
what role did he play in your downfall?
The role of one of the he was a close colleague and friend who turned on me at a particularly critical time, and I thought it was a mistake. It was worse than a crime. It was a mistake, and so it proved.
So you think if you were still in power, you'd have won the last general election?
I think we would have. I think we would have had a very good shot. Yes, I think we would. I mean, as I just remind you, we were only a handful of points behind in the polls. Nothing like the huge gaps that opened up, and reform, which is we were discussing earlier.
Yes.
Was on zero.
Well, how do you solve
hovering
around
around
Nigel Farage
and
as a Conservative leader? Do you have to bring him into the tent?
I know that he's a beloved colleague on this sofa. Does he appear on this sofa?
Sometimes. I treat him as impartially as I'm treating you, though.
Yes, no, good. So what I want to say is, I think Conservatives have got to be conservative and talk about the things they believe in. And I don't think you can win by trying to piggyback or absorb the.
No, but you did a deal with him in 2019. Doesn't the next Conservative leader just have to do a deal?
No, I didn't do any deal.
Well, he stood down in a number of Brexit seats. Come on. He admitted that much. He said it was a catastrophic mistake because you squandered your majority.
I don't know about that. I mean, so he now claims. But
24 for Tories, add them up, they beat Labour.
Yes, but at that stage they were far lower in the polls.
Yeah.
They were far lower, and they weren't in a strong position at all. And I think it is a mistake for Conservatives to talk about your opponents and to big them up. We should be talking about Conservatives.
Yeah.
We should be talking, and we should be. If they'd allowed me to stay on, I think we would have continued to deliver on the levelling up agenda. We ended up in 2024 basically alternately machine gunning both halves of our.
But
coalition.
in your mind, just to clarify this point, you think you lost your premiership because of Rishi Sunak?
No, I think there were lots of things that came together, but I think it was basically.
But mustn't you take more responsibility?
I take full responsibility for everything. I always do. But I mean, the fact is that, as I've told you, I think there was a problem of party management, and I think there were some MPs who thought that things were so bad that they might lose their seats. Though I think they were wrong. But there were quite a lot of MPs who weren't worried that I was going to lose the next election. On the contrary, they were worried I was going to win.
Yeah.
And they thought, Johnson doesn't really go, he's not going to promote me.
Oh,
and
you think there's self-interest at play in politics? Shock horror.
Yeah.
How about Sue Gray? Is she responsible for your demise? What did you make of her appointment as Starmer's Chief of Staff?
I thought it was extraordinary, to be honest. But there you go. But look, but again, you asked me about mistakes I made. I shouldn't have appointed her and asked her to do that thing. And
why?
I mean,
do you think that she
well, because it turned out what I didn't know, though, she'd already been approached to be the chief of staff of Ed Miliband, and
who you're very close to on the net zero front.
And he and I were at the same primary school.
But Sue Gray, should she not have been appointed? Should she not have that role in Downing Street? She's in a very influential position.
I think that, look, I mean, it's far be it from me to intrude on Labour's private grief, but, you know, I do wonder what the hell on earth is going on with those guys. I mean, you know, this guy Wahid Ali, why is he giving money to... What was it about this MP called Conlon that made him...
money for wallpaper and things.
No, on the contrary, as soon as I knew that money going into what was then the ill-fated refurbishment fund for the whole of Number 10, as soon as I knew that it had come from a particular Tory donor, I paid him back in full, because I thought I cannot be, even though the money was going on the blooming Number 10 flat, which was, you know, not something that I owned.
Well, do you think Starmer's getting an easy ride compared to how you were treated when you made these sorts of errors? Is he getting off lightly with Donegate and
I'm
freebies?
sure people were totally right to try to beat me up and, you know, whatever. That's politics. And look, I don't blame the Tory party for wanting to chuck me out if they thought that was genuinely, you know, that's what Tories do. That's how they behave.
Regicidal.
I tried to explain to them that it would not end well.
Okay.
And it didn't.
On leadership, who are you backing? Can you tell me?
I'm levitating. I'm levitating.
So you're not backing anybody as yet? Will you back someone?
No. I think. Look, I think they all have excellent qualities.
Do you like this idea about leaving the ECHR, having a referendum on the ECHR?
Did you read Lord Sumption's pieces? But I thought they were quite.
They're excellent on the ECHR. But what do you think? Should we have a referendum on the ECHR?
I don't know if you need a referendum, but I certainly think the case for. I think there needs to be a big discussion about it, because, you know, it has changed a great deal since the 1970s, when you could say that it did some very important work.
Yeah.
And it has become much more adventurous, legally adventurist, in the way it tries to second guess national parliaments and governments.
It's guilty of a bit of overreach.
And I think it is. I find myself persuaded by Sumption.
Well, there you have it. In the Boris Johnson blame game, who's responsible for his demise? Certainly not him, it seems. It could be Rishi Sunak. Sue Gray is blamed. The Tory party is blamed. Remainers. He does take some responsibility for not putting an arm around colleagues. But what do you think? Really intrigued to hear your reaction to this interview so far. Do go to gbnews.com/your say, and we'll feed in some of your reaction as we analyse this whole interview in the next hour and a half, just to get the reaction from a panel of experts. But coming up next, I talk to Boris Johnson about his relationship with the late Queen and his fondness, would you believe, for Harry and Meghan. Don't go anywhere.
You really could be...
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark Meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show. In this next part of my interview with the former PM, we discuss his warm relationship with Queen Elizabeth II and why he thinks Harry and Meghan are brilliant. What did you mean when you said you wanted to be a world king?
Who says I said that? My sister Rachel. Well, get her. She claims I said that when I was 4 years old.
Oh, didn't you say it?
You need to get her on the. You need to get her on the couch.
But didn't you always have ambitions to be a prime minister?
No, actually, I remember thinking very clearly when I was mayor of London that this was probably the last big job I'd do, and thinking, you know.
But when you were younger, did you want to be prime minister? Just yes or no would be an adequate answer to this question.
I think I wanted to be a rock and roll star. To be honest,
I think you probably wanted to be.
I really envied Mick Jagger. That's what I wanted, and but I was no good. I couldn't master the bass guitar, and so.
Should I just take that as a yes? I think you did want to be prime minister when you were a little boy, didn't you?
Well, honestly,
what does
I wasn't.
king mean?
Well, that's a very good question. But I was. But since you ask, I did. I have chaired the UN Security Council.
Yes.
I was and done all sorts of things. And
you're highly ambitious and competitive, she says.
Well, she can
talk. At the top of the Johnson tree.
She can talk.
Well.
Have you seen her on SAS?
Yes.
Celebrity.
She's very good on it.
She's very good.
Will you go on something like that? Can we see you on Strictly Come Dancing anytime soon?
I wouldn't be any good.
I'll ask you about your programme.
Have you done Strictly Come Dancing?
No, I haven't been asked. I think I think the country's suffered enough, to be honest.
You'd be very good on Strictly Come Dancing.
You write extremely movingly. You're diverting again. You're doing this thing of deflection. You write very movingly about your relationship with Queen Elizabeth II. Should you have revealed she had bone cancer? No one already knew that.
I don't think I was the first to put that in public domain. I think.
All right.
I think that.
Did you have a bit of a testy relationship with King Charles? Did you get on with the Queen and Prince Philip a bit better than?
No, I think look. I mean, what's certainly fair to say is that I used to see the Queen every week, and that was one of the great joys of the job, because it was kind of free psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And there was no confession so appalling that, she'd heard it all before, right?
Would you say she had her work cut out with you compared to other prime ministers?
I don't know. You'd have to. Well, I don't know. She was always. Look, she was. What I can say is she was always very supportive and kindly, and full of really good advice. And so she wouldn't. I sort of have a fair idea of what she thought about lots of things, but. She wouldn't really reveal her hand much, but she would.
You indicate that she's a bit Brexity.
No, I wouldn't go into her political views, and that wouldn't be right.
Also, you say in the book about you think that she did hold on. She was very ill, but she was as sharp as a tack towards the end.
Yeah.
And you think that she held on to do the prime ministerial handover.
I do believe that. Well, no, that was actually what her private secretary Edward Young said.
Yes.
He was a very, very nice and good man, and I do think he said that she had been unwell for a long time, but she was absolutely determined to fulfil her constitutional duty, which was to oversee the peaceful transfer of power from one administration to the next, and she did that. And also
her duty till the very last.
Absolutely, and she was, and she also, I think, to add to her already record-breaking tally prime ministers who've served under her. She probably wanted one more.
From 55 to 56.
Or whatever it was, yes.
Speaking of the royals, tell us about your manly pep talk with Prince Harry.
Yes, well, this was totally ignominious, totally feeble, and this was all my idea, not at the behest of the Crown or anything, the palace or anything like that. Prince Harry and Meghan, in my view, they came to an event we did for female education. There's a huge chapter about female. I think you may not.
Yes, no, I have read that bit because it's in the Foreign Affairs bit.
Yeah. And they were brilliant, and she was particularly good and articulate and on it and on the detail.
So you got on quite well.
And
with Meghan.
I got on well with both of them. And I also worked with Harry when he did his Invictus Games for disabled veterans in the Olympic Park. And so, in a sort of fit of pomposity, I thought, this national asset is leaving our country. I think he's a force on the whole, could be on the whole a force for good. I'm going to try and discourage him. And so I had a pathetic attempt at that. It didn't work.
No.
And there you go. I failed to avert Megxit, but I did deliver Brexit.
Can you even begin to imagine being a fly on the wall as Boris Johnson tries to persuade Prince Harry to stay in the country, despite clearly the Duchess of Sussex at the time trying to drag him across to America to be financially independent, as she put it in the Megxit statement. So, I mean, that was all quite intriguing. I asked him there about his relationship with King Charles because he's much warmer in the book about Queen Elizabeth II than he is about her son. And there's always been this slight hint from him in the book, which he denies. He kind of indicates that the Queen was quite Brexity, along with Prince Philip. There's always been this suggestion that, conversely, Charles and indeed Prince William are a bit more on the Remain side of the argument. I remember writing a piece for The Telegraph describing the Queen being quite maternal towards him, and maybe Charles felt that was a bit threatening, but there was a sort of idea that she quite liked Boris Johnson because he was a bit of a lovable rogue. Was it unfair for me to suggest that she had her work cut out with him when they were in those weekly prime ministerial meetings? I mean, can you imagine Queen Elizabeth II sort of dealing with the ups and downs of the Boris premiership? Frankly, the mind boggles. Anyway, we've still got a bit more to come because it would have been remiss of me to not ask Boris Johnson, as well as this book Unleashed, what he's planning next. And I also wanted to address some of these rumours about him wanting to stage a comeback. I say rumours. He was on the steps of Downing Street, wasn't he, talking about making some kind of Cincinnatus return. So I asked him in the next part of the interview to explain that and what he thinks the future holds for him. And I even asked him a bit of a personal question about his new young family, not expecting him to answer it, but he does answer it. So we're going to go through the next part of the interview now, and after that I'm going to be joined by a punchy panel to analyse the best bits from the interview. So again, stay tuned, more to come.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's a cloudier picture out there today with spells of rain and drizzle with sunshine and showers to start the new week. But through this morning, we have got some spells of sunshine across the far southeast. But as you can see, a lot of cloud around, and that will continue to push its way eastwards. So a largely murky afternoon to come for many of us. We also have heavy spells of rain across the west, especially across Northern Ireland into Wales and the southwest of England, perhaps even with the odd rumble of thunder here. Temperatures holding up still at around 17 or 18 degrees as the high towards the south. As we go through Sunday evening, that band of heavy rain is going to continue to push its way slowly north and eastwards, affecting much of the southern parts of Wales into the Midlands, but we may see some glimmers of late sunshine towards the far southwest. Heavy spells of rain continuing across eastern parts of Northern Ireland and Northern England. Cloudy conditions still remaining across much of Scotland with outbreaks of rain here through Sunday night. And that band of rain is going to continue to push its way north and eastwards, pushing further into Scotland and northern parts of England. Clearer skies developing further towards the west, but we'll also see some showers developing as we go into the start of Monday. So temperatures generally still holding up at around 10 or 11 degrees across the towns and cities to start Monday morning. But it could be quite a murky start for some of us with some low cloud and fog generally lifting and breaking. Once that cloud and rain continues to push its way north across Scotland, then across much of the UK, it's a case of sunny spells, but also some frequent scattered showers that could be on the heavy side with the odd rumble of thunder. And we'll also see temperatures still remaining at around 16 or 17 degrees. Bye-bye for now.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on